guess we're live now, so I guess we could start saying something witty. That seems to be the the typical protocol on this thing.
Yeah, I don't know. Everyone was all kind of sedate just a minute ago. We're like, it's late. It's been a long day already.
Yeah, this whole like having a day off in the middle of the week only to go back to work the next day. That's some bullshit.
Especially on a Wednesday. Yeah. I mean, Wednesday's bad enough.
Yeah. I suppose. Let's get this thing rolling. All right, folks, we're back with another episode of Skirmish Supremacy. As usual, Nick is over there doing some painting. I can't tell what the hell he's painting at the moment, but there he is. And tonight...
I can't see it either.
Nick, what are you painting?
I'm actually not painting anything right now. This was something I painted a while back. This is from Lion Tower Miniatures. And it's Brogan.
Oh, yeah, the Barbarian.
Cool.
All right.
The Barbarian. I named him and got a free model, so, you know.
Nice.
And then this is for our upcoming Exiles game. It's
Oh, so at first it was just a bottle of pills. I was like, what are you trying to say?
And that's for the Exiles game. You know, bottle of pills. That's you know, how I can stand doing this show with you.
Well, you know,
Damn.
It takes all kinds. Anyway, folks, we are joined tonight by with Mike Tunez again, who is outside on his porch in Miami smoking a pipe.
Hello. And
we'll probably be talking about some general gaming, some obviously Blood and Plunder, because it's our jam, and it's what we like, and we like pirates. And we'll probably talk about some other stuff in general as well. So, yeah, tonight's just there's really not too much of a format. We already kind of covered the Kickstarter that's going on right now that's actually doing amazing. And it just keep blowing up and blowing up. So, Mike, why don't you fill us in a little bit? How's the growth of it been for those that haven't really been following along?
Well, it's been pretty good. It's pretty much tracking similar to our previous Kickstarter, which for an expansion, we're very, very pleased that that's how it's going. I believe at this point we're making a little more average per day than we were last time. Don't quote me on that, but I believe that's from the last time we checked. That's how it was going.
Nice.
So.
Oh no, go ahead.
No, that's pretty much it.
Oh, okay, cool. So yeah, I just know that a lot of times with Kickstarters, and folks, if you've never backed one before, it's kind of a common thing that the first week they see a spike, and then usually like week 2, week 3, everything kind of it peters off a little bit. Like it stays steady, but it definitely does not see like that spike of growth that you see in week 3, and then usually week 4 comes around. If it's already funded, then they see another spike. So it's kind of that strange middle ground where you want to see more happen, but it happens eventually at some point.
Yeah, it seems to be that seems to be how every Kickstarter goes, right? There's that sudden spike, then it kind of just it's like a reverse bell curve.
Yeah, exactly. Then you always watch like those 1 or 2 guys that just like drop out of it, and you're like, "Oh, you sons of bitches!" But it happens. Yeah, we used to do that all the time when I was over at Cool Mini or Not, where we're watching it. It's like, and it's funded in about 30 seconds, and we just lost $200,000 in a course of a week. What the hell was that?
Yeah.
So,
thankfully, no negative days for us. So not yet anyway. Yeah. Fingers crossed.
That's good.
Those are never
good
fun. Those
because
are low morale days.
Because we need to get to that $1 million.
Yes, exactly. So for folks that you are not aware, at $1 million, Mike did state, and we have it in writing, that if we manage to get him $1 million from Kickstarter, that everybody gets a blunder monkey, and not just a miniature, like an actual monkey with a blunderbuss.
Yes, an actual living monkey with a firearm. I may have gotten myself into potential legal trouble there, but I'm sure there's very strict laws. I'm sure there's very strict laws pretty much in every country about shipping primates and firearms, especially in the same container. So,
for some reason, I have a feeling he's going to send all of them to our houses.
Yeah, I can see how that's going to look.
You want a plunder monkey? Here's a goddamn plunder monkey.
I'm just relieved you're not painting one right now. That's what I totally expected to see right now when I got on this camera.
Yeah, then he's just gonna fill that container up with like nothing but monkeys and blunderbusses and like pop rocks on meth. It's just gonna go to hell. Awesome. So yeah, you guys have actually been using a new feature that actually, up until you guys started doing it, I had no idea it even existed. The Kickstarter Live.
Right. Like, yeah. I didn't even know it existed. So thankfully, our graphic artist Lily, she told us. She basically said, Kickstarter has this live feature now. I was like, cool, let's use it. So we're not very well equipped for it. It's literally just me with sitting my laptop on a bookshelf and pointing it down at our games. So
yeah.
After going into the Beast of War studio and all their fancy setup, I feel very inadequate with our game filming. But it gets the job done, I suppose.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because I know over at the Beast of War studio they got like minimum 4 cameras on you at any particular time.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah, it's insane. So that last game you guys played, it was the Dutch versus the Caribs, and apparently the Dutch did not do that hot.
No, well, that's partially my fault.
Partially my fault. Were you playing them again, Mike?
It's just a lot. It's a lot of pressure being on camera, and it's technically playtesting. So I'm weighing all the options and seeing what's working and what's not. It's very distracting. I've got more excuses if you need more. So.
Because I know that I was watching and I'm sitting here thinking, oh man, these Caribs are running right into a Dutch blunderbuss, and every time you roll, you're like, nothing happens.
Yeah, honestly though, I'm kind of terrible when it comes to melee-centered armies, like a bunch of sailors on land. Still okay with them at sea, but yeah, if that would have been my tailor-made force, there definitely would have been more muskets in there. So
yeah,
that's more my speed. So I just generally with melee units like that, or even short-range units, I tend to just kind of walk them into their own death, just trying to close range a little too aggressively. So.
Well, I've definitely experienced that. I still haven't won with my French because I keep thinking they can go in and chop stuff up.
Yeah,
they can. What units are you using?
Well, this past week it was the militia and the Marins. The Marins do well, but the militia doesn't do so well.
No, the militia, all those fancy pistols and bayonets the militia has, those are purely for defensive reasons. Do not charge somebody with those unless you've got a really clear advantage. They're not too great in melee. And however, if you go to the sailor units for the French, like the filibusters, and even the Enfants Perdus and the Marins, those guys they do pretty good work.
Yes,
but the buccaneers and the militia, don't get those guys in combat if you can avoid
it. Yeah, if you can avoid. Though actually, the funny part is I was giving a guy a demo game. And he ended up charging my buccaneers with lanceros, and he gets up there and he manages to whiff. His lancero, or he hit me once, and I managed to make the save. And then I turned around in the next round, I hit him back and wiped out his unit of lanceros with my buccaneers. I was like, that shouldn't have even happened.
No, that should not have. I'm assuming he didn't have any fortune left when he got only one hit.
No, we had used our fort. We had burned through it turn before.
Yeah, as often happens. Just.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, I mean, to be fair though, like I play, I mean, mostly Brethren of the Coast, so like a lot of my stuff is Sea Dogs and Marins and Marineros. So it's like I'm used to just like being screw it and charging in there because, well, I've got pistols otherwise. Like I need to be up there. And it's funny, even running stuff like Forlorn Hope or L'Enfant Perdu, like I have killed more of my own models with grenades than I have my opponent.
Yeah. That's my story of grenades. I can't get grenades to work to save my life. Anytime I take Enfants Perdus or Forlorn Hope, I'm just hopeless with them. They just, they have Resolve 4, but I'm always shaken. And then I finally get to the point where I have like 3 guys left. I'm going to try to do a last desperate grenade throw, and then I blow myself up. And those units aren't for me. I don't know. They just don't like me.
Yeah. So to be honest with you, I've got 4 boats here. 2 of them are completely painted. I have yet to use a damn boat in Blood and Plunder. I didn't get a chance to run the demo for boats at Adepticon. I really wanted to, but that table was always full. We had other shit that we had going on at the time. And every single time that I've sat down to play Blood and Plunder, it's always been land battles. So I have no idea what my force does when it comes time to the water at all.
Well, if you're playing Brethren of the Coast, you've got a lot of good options. So you've got Sea Dogs to man your cannons, if you want to focus on cannons.
Right.
You've got Buccaneers and Filibusters and Freebooters to act as boarding parties, as well as hang on, what did I do? I think I did something I was supposed to. Did I disappear?
You did disappear.
We can hear you, just can't see you anymore.
All right, I'm gonna fix that. Oh crap! Can you still hear me?
We can still hear you.
All right, so anyway, I'll carry on. So yeah, so there's those are good options for sailing, because you've got the filibusters and freebooters particularly can sail, they can board well, they can shoot with their muskets well. Those are all really valuable things at sea.
Right. So I just need to actually get in there and get in a couple of good games with the boats and see how it all operates. But that was actually something I was going to ask. Yeah. So, like, I've been reading a lot of stuff lately on the history of, like, the different pirates and privateers, and obviously, like, how the French were at that point, how the English were at that point. But, like, I haven't found anything yet that says, like, the French were good at this, the English were good at this, the Spanish were good at this.
Right. So it's very hard to find this information.
Yeah.
Well,
so
I mean, the one thing we do know is the Spanish just weren't good at anything.
Well, you can kind of I guess what you're gearing up to ask me about is how we kind of come to all this.
Well, I was, but since you're just going to go ahead and ruin it for me.
I kind of figured, because we do get that question a lot. So a lot of it is just piecing together accounts that we have, right? Mm-hmm. So we've got a good one is the Buccaneers of America. In the Buccaneers of America, you've got a lot of accounts of, from the English side, obviously, on the English and French side, I should say, on how they did and how the Spaniards reacted to certain things and how the English and French differed, and you pick up some clues, and you can kind of put those clues together, and you can realize some things. So what we realized is that the Spanish militia couldn't seem to keep up with the Buccaneers when it came to musket battles, essentially, right? So when they were exchanging volleys, the Spaniards seemed to always be at a disadvantage. Mm-hmm. However, when the Buccaneers, anytime they felt they kind of had an advantage and would press on the Spaniards and get into grips with them, that's when it seemed like the Spaniards would turn it around, right? So they apparently had they were pretty good in close combat, probably better than the freebooters and filibusters were generally. And also we noticed that a lot of times one of the tactics the Buccaneers would use is that they would fall back. They'd feint retreat, so the Spaniards would think they were winning, and the Spanish would get full of bravado and chase them down, right? Mm-hmm. So we see a lot of stuff like that happening, both when it's fake and when it's real. So that's where we get the ruthless rule from, where they can kind of when they feel they have an advantage, they'll get filled with excitement and kind of start getting their act together.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that ruthless rule has definitely caught me a couple times.
Oh yeah, it can be pretty strong.
Yeah, it gets a little nutty, definitely to say the least. Especially when you start mobbing. Nick, how many units did I throw at your filibustiers? It was like 3 different units, and 2 of them had ruthless.
Yeah, it was at least 3 different units. And actually, I thought they all had ruthless.
No, did the Forlorn Hope have ruthless? I don't know. I don't have my rule book in front of me.
We're using Lelone.
I was not. No, I was running Brethren of the Coast, and I was just running a seasoned captain who was in with my freebooters that basically sat back, and I think they killed 1 model the whole game. So my captain's like, "Good job, team." That was
so
really
his guy's ruthless, not yours. Right?
No, because I had Marineros running Brethren of the Coast.
Okay, right.
So, they were just charging in there, just killing stuff. Because what was it? It was like a unit of 12 filibustiers you threw at me, Nick.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it kind of went south. So it was but we had a lot of fun with that one. But one of the things that like I don't know if it's more me, but I know Nick and I talked about it a little bit. It's kind of like, what do you guys see as like the ideal amount of terrain in the game? Because I mean, I've seen like massive boards with a lot of stuff all over it, and then I've also seen some that are very sparse, more 40K-ish, if you want to call it that.
Right. So definitely more is better. It depends on what if you're trying to fight some historical scenario or something, or some setting that you're familiar with, then, obviously. But in a competitive sense, lots of terrain is generally good. Not, I wouldn't say infinity level terrain, although that would definitely work. But probably, I think we recommend, I forgot the exact percentage that we recommend, but I believe it's a quarter of the table. Check right now, actually. No, it's around here somewhere. But yeah, I believe it's about a quarter's, if you could fill up an entire quarter of the table worth of terrain and spread that out, that's generally pretty good.
Okay, cool. And that's
and that's kind of like a good middle ground, I think. So that's that's going to give you a pretty dense. There should definitely be some blocking terrain that blocks line of sight. There's a lot of units that totally rely on that for advancing. Lots of woods or buildings and things of that nature are generally good. So you can get some nice blocked line of sight areas and but also a good amount of cover around that, so that that's going to make the game more interesting for sure.
Awesome.
At least on land. So at sea, you probably want to have, unless you're playing on a very small board, you probably just want to have a couple shoals and maybe an island or something like that. So
just enough to sail around to where it's not just completely open water. You want to have a little bit of a challenge when it comes time to navigating your ships. Unless you're
right. So yeah, I mean, most of these battles with small ships like these would take place in coastal waters, especially where privateers and merchant ships and stuff like that are involved, because they're generally trying to use that to their advantage. To pretty much, that's why they would sail a lot of times smaller ships, so the bigger ships couldn't chase them in. So if you're in a sloop and your opponent has a frigate, that's one of your advantages, and that's one of the things you can capitalize on, is the fact that he's more likely to bump the bottom when you're not.
Gotcha. So it definitely makes sense on that aspect, because I've seen a lot of the boards that people have been playing, and it might be just that they're trying out demos where when it comes time to the ship combat, I don't really see much in the water. It's just kind of a big open board to allow the ships to maneuver.
Right. But, and you can add a bunch of terrain too. It makes it interesting. So we've definitely played with lots of terrain on the table to see how it works. You can down though if you put too much, but that may be something that is worth it if you want to play a really interesting game where there's a lot of maneuvering happening and you're sailing around islands and big mountains of rock and stuff like that.
Nice. Yeah, we definitely got to try that, Nick.
Oh, definitely. I actually plan on making some of the big rocks that I've seen some other people using soon, just for that express reason. It definitely looks a whole lot of fun trying to sail around that. Plus, I have a bunch of sloops, so you can bring your frigate. It's all right.
Yes, I can just get shot to piss. Yes, that's what I want to do. But yeah, so obviously you guys are playing a lot of Blood and Plunder for very, very obvious reasons. Kickstarter going on. You guys have a game you're trying to get out there. The community is massively growing from what I've seen, like bigger than any of the other games that I think we've covered on the podcast. It just seems like you guys have cornered the market when it comes time to, I guess you would call it more of the mainstream historical games outside of like World War II. Because anytime I hear about any other historical game, it's always like, oh, well, there's this 3 guys over here in their mid-40s that play some Black Powder, and that's about it.
Yeah. So the historic, but I mean, yeah, it's been pretty awesome. We're really excited about the response that we've gotten, and we just continue to grow more and more every day. I mean, it's kind of hard to, like, we look back and realize that we haven't even been selling products for 6 months yet. This is outside of Kickstarter. So, and to see how much we've grown in so little time is really encouraging. So it's kind of awesome. And we're definitely attracting the same crowd that kind of plays like Bolt Action and Saga and that kind of thing. A little bit more of the kind of like the hybrid historical games, what I like to call them. It's kind of like, the games are definitely historically leaning, but they're a little more geared towards gaminess. You know, they kind of attract a lot of burnt out 40K players and stuff like that. Especially a lot of younger guys play 40K. Now they're like kind of middle-aged, 30s and 40s. They just want to play something different, a little simpler, a little faster.
Would you just stop looking at the camera and describing us?
Well, I'm describing myself for sure. Except I never really got into 40K. But aside from that, yeah, I'm definitely describing. I got into similar games. But yeah, I think that's kind of where most of the people at Firelock are at, and then that's kind of translated in that way. I think people kind of saw that, realized that's kind of where we were at. So I think that's definitely part of it.
And I will definitely say, as I've played it and demoed it at the local game store here, Gigabytes, the Saga players have been coming over and checking it out. Though one of them keeps saying, "Nope, I'm not interested. It's pirates," and I keep having to tell him, "You just got to play Henry Morgan." He was a stickler for the rules. As soon as he didn't have a commission, he hung everyone that kept privateering. So. Makes it all legal.
So I would say, and everybody in charge of marketing at Firelock would come in here and hit me in the head with a shovel. But I wouldn't necessarily call it a pirate game. I would call it a colonial skirmish game, a colonial historical skirmish game, because I'm definitely sneaking in some stuff along those lines in the new book. As you can see, I'm representing all the militias. Not just for the purpose of fighting pirates, but for fighting each other, which they did very often. That's also where the Native Americans come in, and the regular military forces that'll be part of the expansion, as well as some other stuff like some North American ranger types and Coeur d'Ivoire and stuff like that. So that's all going to be in the book too. So anybody who's interested in colonial history, this is definitely a war game that covers that. Or it's going to cover that pretty thoroughly.
Right. And it makes sense because, I mean, all this is going on at the same time. And, like, as cool as it is to, like, just stick to the pirate game, right? After a while, people are like, well, what else was going on in the world? Like, we're on ships on islands. Like, what else was there? Like, the game's called Blood and Plunder. You can't tell me that they weren't, like, going around just fucking shit up for everybody else. So what else was there? So, because everybody was boring at the time.
A lot of people don't realize, too, is that pirates were just basically provincial forces at the time. They were the what's his name? Oh, my God. Of course, Christopher Mings. Christopher Mings was a naval commander, right? He was the first, guy doing major actions out of Jamaica, but he was a naval commander. But because they couldn't afford to furnish a navy, they just made a navy out of buccaneers.
Yeah.
Right. So the buccaneers were the bulk of the naval force of England in the Caribbean. So when you read a lot of secondary sources of history books, right, that are kind of a little more scholarly, they'll often describe colonial forces, and they won't describe them as buccaneers or pirates. They'll just describe them as basically seamen with muskets. They'll describe them basically as just colonial forces, colonial adventurers, or militia, or seamen, or things like that.
Yeah, I was going to say, they usually call them like the colonial navy or something along those lines.
Yeah, just different things like that. So there'd be provincial troops or auxiliaries or whatever, and they would complement, if not make up, the full bulk of a lot of these forces. And the same thing is true all over the New World and beyond. So that's just the nature of a colonial power at the time, which you barely got enough money to fight all the wars you're fighting at home, so you kind of want your colonies to kind of fend for themselves, and so that these kinds of forces work out really well. You can just keep whatever you plunder, fine, give us a percentage and then keep most of it, and here's your license to go and do that. It's a really cheap way to have an effective force that you don't have to pay for, and in fact brings you money in. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was interesting. So, having gotten all into the pirate stuff lately, I picked up and listened to the audiobook of Blue Water Empire this past couple of weeks, and it was really, really interesting to, listen to that history, mostly about Henry Morgan.
Right. It's basically about Henry Morgan, yeah. Goes into L'Ollonais a little bit. I think that's about it.
Yeah.
So
it goes into Pardue as well.
Oh, Pardal, yeah. Yeah, that's true. So, what's interesting about that book? What that book is it's basically Buccaneers of America, right? The Exquemelin, the book that's written in the period.
Yeah.
What the author did is he basically got that book and kind of retold it in kind of this fictional narrative format. Although it's not that it's fictional, but kind of in that format. You know what I mean?
Right.
He just turns it into just like a fun story.
It definitely was, because one of the things that he did was he paralleled Morgan's rise and all that with somebody who supposedly came over at roughly the same time and didn't do anything. Didn't become anything great. He just kept being one of the buccaneers as he just existed.
Right.
But it was kind of interesting to still reading it, seeing some of it, and then hearing something that was a theatrical version of events.
And some of the stories are so crazy they almost don't even sound made up, but it's crazy. But these are documented things that happen.
I'm sure a lot of those
are really, really interesting stories. Oh yeah, he was a crazy guy.
Yeah, so I know we kind of mentioned him in the past, and Nick and I have joked about him a little bit, but historically, that guy. I mean, for those of you again listening for the first time, Francois L'Ollonais was this pirate that was an absolute freaking psychopath. He makes Hannibal Lecter look like a priest.
Yeah.
That's actually a pretty good comparison.
So yeah, as far as Francois L'Ollonais,
yeah, he was not a sane guy.
Yeah, because so Mike, why don't you fill us in? What was some of the stuff that he did? Because I dug a little bit. But what I got was kind of the clip notes out of Wikipedia, and I didn't get too much farther than that. But from what I understand, that guy was a heinous son of a bitch.
Yeah. So he's definitely a sociopath for sure, or some kind of, I don't know. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not going to try to diagnose him, but he was definitely had some sort of mental instability that caused him to just not value human life at all. So some of the stuff that he did was to get people to talk. So once he raided a town, he was all about the torture and get no matter what, right? So some of the stuff that he did was he would cut out a guy's heart and in front of another guy and gnaw on it and lick, and then or get another captive and cut him up in little pieces with his cutlass, and then lick the blade clean in front of the others to make them kind of realize that he wasn't playing around, right? So he also did some pretty crazy stuff. I think we talked one time, I don't know if it was with you guys, but about how he basically got a bunch of canoes and captured a 10-gun ship. Canoes, and this ship was, I believe, armed with or filled up with Spanish musketeers and soldiers. So this was no small task to row up to a big ship like that with 10. It's basically attacking a light frigate in 2 or 3 longboats. It's in our game terms. So right. He was kind of a wild dude.
Right. And yeah, I was gonna say one of the things I kind of read is obviously people talk about the pirate code and a lot of it is fantasized, but at the same time you and I have talked before, even on the podcast, because you even said it doesn't make for a great war game, is that pirates for the most part, when they took over your ship or took over your small fishing town or whatever, they were okay, we've taken you over, just give us your stuff, nobody gets hurt, we'll go on our way. And they weren't all about killing everybody to the last man. Where it seemed with L'Ollonais, he was okay, now I'm just going to do whatever the hell I want to you people. And it was
right. And even still,
the exact opposite.
Yeah, and even still, he was also smart because he knew the value of survivors. So survivors to witness his brutality and spread the word. So he was fierce competition for Morgan for a while because he was so effective and people knew who he was.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And when Little Nate came around, you didn't play around. You just kind of gave up what you needed to, to give up, and then maybe you'd be spared. Right. So that was part of the reason he did what he did, because it got results. And then I don't know if we actually talked about, but then of course at the end of the day he ended up getting eaten by I believe it was Darien Indians in Nicaragua. So he got a fitting fate. But back to the original thing of pirates, not so much kind of being thieves generally, right? They're not trying to. They're in this for profit 100%. So they're trying to take as little casualties as possible. They're not willing to do anything of tremendous risk. So everything is calculated. They would go after places they knew were weak or they knew they could take. Although in some instances it was a matter of pride, where they didn't want to look like cowards to their fellow buccaneers. So in some cases, like there was a fortress when they were attacking Panama, where they just couldn't take this fortress. They kept getting gunned down and mowed down, and they were just like, they didn't want to look like cowards, so they just kept going at it. I'm going on a tangent, so I'm gonna stop myself and go back to what I was trying to say earlier.
Totally fine. But
so one of the things I was gonna say is the reason we chose the 17th century as opposed to the early 18th, which is one of the characters people are most familiar with. This is one of the reasons, right? Is in this period, you have pirates are actually getting into a lot more fights than the 18th century pirates are. 18th century pirates, you may get a merchant ship that puts up some token resistance, but generally they don't really fight much, right? Whereas in the 17th century, all these buccaneers, the Spanish are not just sitting there and taking it. They're putting together what's called armadillas, which are little private, which are basically militia sea forces, right? So you just basically get a bunch of militia, throw them on a ship, and they're going after you, after the pirates. Most of their shipping is armed with soldiers, anything with, with any kind of good cargo, or just lots of cannon in general. So you're more likely to get into an actual fight when you're going after a ship, or when they're coming after you, for that matter. And these guys were a little more bold than their 18th century counterparts also. So they were more willing to go after something that, a ship that may be a little better armed, knowing that it might be better, there might be better profit in it for them, and they feel confident. They pretty much felt that two of them was the equal of one Spaniard, right? I'm sorry, two Spaniards was equal to one of them. And so they felt as long as they had equal numbers or something close to it, they could pretty much take it.
That's a pretty ballsy way of looking at the world.
Except
you're talking about like you're on like this long narrow thing in the middle of the water where if you fall over you're pretty much drowned and dead, and it's just like you just go and stab happy. Which actually, okay, so yeah, to kind of bring something up that I know was brought up a couple times on the Facebook page is like they didn't really have uniforms or identifying markers between like crews, did they?
Not official ones, no. Like somebody said, there's evidence they may have tied some kind of marker on them, like a band, like a cloth around their arm or something. That's likely, although that would have been in a more serious engagement. Whereas, kind of most of the units you'll see represented in Blood Plunder, where you've got like maybe 15 to 50 models aside, right? So small skirmishes like that, you're generally going to know who's who pretty easily. I think so anyway. I speculate that, but there's most of the times we read about bands, armed bands, and stuff like that, or some kind of markings to indicate what side everyone's on. Generally, read about it in like these big naval battles and stuff.
Right, where it's
these big men of war that've got like crew of 400 aboard. So it can get chaotic.
Yeah, exactly. Because I was kind of wondering about that myself because everybody obviously when it comes down to a miniatures game, like everybody wants their stuff to be for the most part somewhat uniform, especially if you're running something like in my case Brethren of the Coast, where it's like, okay, I've got English, Spanish, and French all in my force, and soon to be I'm assuming like Dutch and some of the other models when this Kickstarter finishes up. And it's like, okay, so really I've got everything, for the most part, as far as the major factions. So I can play Brotherhood of the Coast or any single nationality. So how the hell do I go about discerning which one is which and when? So
when the different nationalities, it's a little easier, as we've sculpted them all a little differently.
Yeah.
So there will be some tells there. It's when you've got a bunch of the same, I think it's more of a problem. So like sometimes I'll take out the English militia, and it's just a bunch of squads of English militia, generally a squad or two of freebooters to back them up. So at that point, it could be, you want to try to know who's who in case guys get bunched together. So I like to just put a little mark on the back of the base. Sometimes I'll just put something temporary, just to kind of separate them whenever they get close together.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can see that.
That said, there's nothing to stop you from painting them uniformly. You know what I mean? If you want to know what's what, you can paint. How that's a cool thing too. There's nothing to say they didn't ever get uniform for whatever reason, right? Maybe they all decided to wear red shirts or blue shirts, or for whatever reason, that's just their colors. They decided to be like a gang. We're gonna have colors.
Actually, one of the guys on the Facebook group, he talked about he was painting all of the neckerchiefs on his guys for his units were all gonna match in color. And I was like, man, that's a great idea. Damn it, I've already painted half my guys. I can't
repainting a neckerchief's not that bad, right?
I already painted half of them. I don't want to go back and try because you're gonna try and change one thing, and you're gonna touch something, and you're gonna be like, "Damn it!"
Yeah, of course. No, that's inevitable. That's and then it's super nerve-wracking to paint it too. You're like, "Oh my god, I don't want to do this over." I've done that lots of times. So. Painted something a wrong color, and then I'm like, it doesn't matter, it looks fine. Then it starts to bother me, and eventually I just go back to it and touch it up.
Right. Actually, I
or
got
just a really
annoyed with
bad
myself. Thought I had all my units divided up the other day, and then I realized I was painting one of my militiamen a color I didn't want him to be. They were all going to be, the kind of darker gray that you guys have on the website, and not the blue. And then I'm like, well, son of a gun. Now he's blue. Shit.
That gray is fine. You can also do white. White would have been good. I think blue would probably have been okay. I think blue was definitely reasonable. I know that the French like blue, but we know for a fact. We just painted them gray because we had a good source about. I forgot. I think it was maybe Martinique or something where the militia had gray coats. So I think we just went with that because we had one confirmation. So we're like, we'll do that. But there was definitely no uniformity there either. So you can paint them all different colors and that still works. It would have been militia would have been encouraged to wear the same color, but you've only got what you got, unless the noble in charge of, not the noble, the
governor,
the well-to-do fellow in charge of your militia decided to provide you with a coat.
Yeah, we all know that,
which they sometimes did. So sometimes they would, because it was a matter of personal prestige for them, for their militia unit to look, very good and professional. So
nice. So I know obviously you guys have been playing a lot of Blood Plunder over there, but what else have you guys been really wanting to play lately outside of your own games? Like, has there been anything else that's been really sticking out to you guys as some of you guys have been playing around the office on like lunch break or whatever?
Yeah, so the game we've been playing the most outside of Blood and Plunder, although honestly, since the Kickstarter we haven't seen a lot of other gaming, but we were playing before a lot, and we probably will, is Arena Rex. Arena Rex has been really fun. We met the guys at AdeptCon actually, and some of our guys did some trades, and they played the game, and it's really cool. We've been enjoying that. It's nice, quick, perfect lunchtime game. That's also got it's really fun and tactical. We like it. We're enjoying it. That's the one main one. 8th edition 40K has gotten a few of our guys back into playing 40K.
That's not
at least
surprising.
Occasionally.
I was gonna say I still have.
They seem to be enjoying themselves with it.
Like I'm too much of a skirmish guy now. Like I think that's my big thing. Like honestly, out of the games we play, my rank and flank is Kings of War, and that's because I know the guys over at Mantic. And honestly, I wouldn't be playing it if it wasn't for like the sales guy Joe going, "Here's a box of ogres." Like I don't think if he wouldn't have done that for me, I don't think I would have been playing the game. But
right.
You guys are probably, as far as games go, the highest model count that I play.
Yeah, and that's I think it's designed that way. I think to kind of be in the middle. You don't need like 100 different models to play. You could have 25, like what we saw in a starter set. Is generally, all you really need.
Right.
As it goes with most games, you're generally going to end up with more for variety's sake or whatever, But you don't need more than that to play. And yeah, I mean, Kings of War is a really cool game that I enjoy a lot. That we play. We haven't played Kings of War like in a good month or two, unfortunately, because there's no time.
Well,
but
I mean, everything you guys got going
I can
on,
see why
totally
it's.
Get it.
Yeah, it's got the mentality of a skirmish game, despite being a massive, giant army game.
Yeah.
So
now,
I can see why you're attracted to it.
Didn't you actually make an entire like Kingdoms of Men army using like Blood and Plunder models?
Not yet, but I'm going to. I'm going to eventually. Now that we're getting the cavalry and the artillery on the field guns and everything, definitely gonna. I now have what I need to make it work. So
I could have sworn you posted a picture.
I'm looking forward to doing that
page about that or something similar where it was like, oh yeah, I made like I maybe it was you and maybe it was somebody else, but I could have sworn that you put up.
It wasn't me, but somebody. Well, somebody did a really cool thing. They got like one of our ships, and they put a bunch of I think it was actually the shark dudes from the cool. I think it's the Cool Mini Not game.
Wrath of Kings.
That skirmish one. I think it's that one.
Yeah.
And I think they got a bunch of minis for that and put them on. Yeah, they put them on one of our ships, and that was like that's some kind of units from Trident Realms. I'm not sure the unit, but I saw that and I commented on it, and then I said that I was gonna eventually put a whole force together. Was my plan. Now, what I'm thinking of doing too when I do that force is the War Machine. I forgot what it's called in the book, but some like the War Machine for Kingdoms of Men, right? Which I think is supposed to represent the battle steam tanker, whatever it's called. So I was thinking of kind of just getting a ship and modding it for that, setting it up as a thing.
Wait, you wouldn't be trying to put a cannon in the bow of a longboat, would you?
No,
I see. He's got to take
we'll do something like that.
Got to take a big drink before he lies to us.
I was thinking the longboat because of its size, but maybe I'll do a piragua. That could actually work. That could work well, yes. But anyway.
Yeah, I've got plans.
I believe the question was what games we were playing. So for the most part, that's it. A buddy of mine who I used to play a lot of Dust with back in the day moved back, and he's got me playing some Dust again lately. So I've gotten a few games of Dust in the last month, and that's been pretty cool. It's a game I've always enjoyed, despite its hairy past.
Yeah, I've been wanting to get back, and I got a little bit of stuff from Dust, but I've never had a chance to fully play it. Like back in the day, I used to play the game that came before Dust, which is 1843, which was
oh my god, yeah, that was a great game. I have everything for that still.
Yeah, so I used to run.
That is a fantastic game.
Yeah, so for me, like the moment that I saw that the Axis had like the kind of the cyber monkeys, I was like, okay, fine. I have to go with the Axis because they have Marcus the super gorilla, and they also have the other gorillas with the cyber hands. I don't care about anything else in that faction. Just let me run all the white gorillas again. So
right, 1843 was a fantastic game. I really missed that game. I thought it was great, and especially at this point, if it was still around with all the streamlining people have been doing the games, that game could have been really spectacular. It's kind of a shame.
Yeah.
I miss it.
Yeah, it was one of those games that just everything about it for the most part. I mean, there's no matter what, after a while you grow a game and a couple things might seem sameish here and there, but I can honestly say that like each faction felt very, very different in how it played.
Oh yeah, completely different. Yeah, there was definitely no similarities there, with the exception. No, not even. Never mind. I was gonna say maybe the mercenaries that came out later, but no, not even them. Despite the fact that they kind of copied some weapons here and there, but
yeah, that was about the extent.
Yeah, but they definitely had flavor down in a really big way, which is I think the one thing that keeps 40K afloat. I think all the flavor that's in that game and the differences and all the different factions and armies is kind of what appeals to people and the nostalgia. But yeah, I think 1843 could have been like the big war game had they just done it right. I don't even know what happened with it, but
I think a lot of it was just that people kind of grew out of it, and I know that for a long time the fan base, they kind of allowed the fan base to have their way with the rules. So after a while, it's like, oh, we're playing edition 2.754 compared to 2.75. And after a while, it's like, well, which version are we playing? Like, what's your tournament, or what kind of rules are you using in your event at your store? Or, when you guys play at your store, are you guys using 6.0 or, what are you guys using? And I think that's one of the big things that kind of ruined it.
I only ever played out of what the rule book was. So, but I remember when they had those army boxes that came out, those that were a really good deal, that the game kind of made this. That's right around the time I got into it. I got into it right before those came out. This giant resurgence, and then all of a sudden they just stopped printing stuff because they were going to make a 2.0. And then after that, the game just fizzled out, disappeared.
Yeah, and I don't exactly know, like, how. I know it happened quickly, but like the real reasons behind it disappearing, I guess, is kind of a mystery. Listeners, if you know, go ahead and comment, because I don't know. All I know is I really enjoyed it. I had Gorilla Grodd Space Monkeys that were really good at mid-range, sucked at long range. God help you if I got involved with you in melee combat.
Yeah, my brother played those. I played the UNA, and I just love the walkers they had. The light walkers, they looked so cool, and their heavy infantry guys. Those guys were great designs. They played really well too. Glass cannons completely, but they were lots of fun to play. But a lot of the stuff that game actually had, as you may even have seen it, but that game had a little bit of influence on a lot of the design on Blood Plunder. The way they kind of did range bands, the card activation. It's definitely in a different way, but those ideas kind of all came from there. I guess those were in my head, so we have a different way of doing it. But I would probably have to give credit to 1843 for the birth of those ideas.
Yeah. Well, nowadays, just because of the fact that there's so many games out there and everything else, like, no matter what, when you're creating something new, you're always pulling inspiration from somewhere else. There's always going to be, like, as a game designer, you find those things where it's like, well, what did I like about the games that I played? Okay, how do I do something similar but make it my own? And it's not that you're ripping it off. It's just like, this is the direction that you liked and you make it work. Like, the RPG world does that constantly, where people are like, I was heavily influenced by this, and the creator was an awesome guy, and because of that, like, I took kind of what they were doing and made it my own and threw in my own rules and all that, where it's like, I made it something new and unique. Yeah, it's going to seem similar to this, but it's something totally new. And I think we're just going to see that in wargaming as a whole.
Yeah, and that's what's kind of cool about there being so many different games out there these days. That's the good side of it. What some people might see as oversaturation, it definitely breeds a lot of creativity, because one idea might spark another, connects with another from another game, and then you've got this. Well, I think war games are better now because of it. You've got so many really clean rule sets out there right now that that they don't have a lot of exceptions. There's not a lot of this and this except this and then only when that kind of things, and I think that's a part of that for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, hell, even some of the stuff I've been working on too. Like I borrowed some things from AT-43. You know, and I know a couple other games that have as well. Like for me, it was kind of like the difficulty band chart based upon your skill versus my skill means I need to roll this or better.
Yeah, which was great.
Yeah, and so, you know, my stuff has something very similar to that. You know, it doesn't use the 1d6. It uses, you know, other mechanics that are in there. But really, I got that idea from the chart from AT43, and I just kind of made it my own. And I'm not going to apologize for it. You know, it was something that I liked. It's something that I wanted to see returned, and there it is. So, you know, it kind of is what it is on that. One of the games, honestly, if we're going to talk about resurgence of games, one I really want to see come back with that whole streamlined appeal, aside from AT43, is definitely Confrontation.
I actually never played that one.
Oh,
but you mean the original one, I imagine, not the one that was out at the same time as AT43? Or
so
I know there was two versions of it.
Yeah, so there was Confrontation, which was, I guess a good way to put it was kind of like the old, like, classic Hero Hammer of Warhammer Fantasy Battle, where it was like, okay, we've got like a handful of badasses, and then 2 or 3 units of mooks that are just kind of there to be extra wound counters for my badasses, or to be meat shields, or, you know, whittle down that one guy where it's like 2 badasses went at it, and then this guy's got like 1 wound left, so okay, let's throw these 6 spearmen at him just to get rid of him. You know, where it's like it was like, yeah, the spearmen were there, but they were kind of like the cheerleading squad or like the cleanup crew. If they ever went in first, it was because they were sacrificing themselves to stop a model from you doing something cool over here instead. So, you know, that was like the original Confrontation, where there was a lot of character and everybody had, I don't want to say like a bunch of stats. It wasn't like they were full on RPG characters, but there was so much that they could do. And then AT43 was out, and then that was when they released Confrontation Ragnarok, which was their version of a rank and flank game. And I think where it threw a lot of people off is that you never mounted everything on trays. So it was never like, oh, it's you know, 10 across and 3 deep. It was like, okay, so what is that? That's going to be 30 models, right? But when I move my models, I can change the formation and, you know, do like wedges and, you know, V's and things like that. And it's like, but they all have to be touching. And it's like, oh, dear God, like every time you moved a unit, it was like, it took you 4 minutes just to move a unit. So,
yeah, I can don't see that being practical.
Yeah, so it was one of those things where, yeah, they definitely wanted it to be more. I don't think they executed it well.
Gotcha. Yeah, we're adding in the campaign book that we're doing now, or not a campaign book, it's an expansion book. The expansion book we're doing now, some rules to play big battles like that, right? So if you want to play with, ideally they're set up for multiple players, so you can each play an army, essentially a full army, or you can just play a really big battle this way. So if you want to play this big battle, one of the things we're going to suggest is using movement trays. If you're going to have like, you know, a bunch of squads, you're going to have squads of guys everywhere. Putting on a movement tray is going to speed it up like crazy. So,
yeah. Or would you guys do more like the movement rings, since right now you kind of have the unit cohesion of like the 4-inch band and the 5-inch band?
Yeah, that's any kind of like, they have those skirmish trays now, which got, you know, they have like the ones that are kind of odd shapes, or they're round or something like that. It doesn't matter. It's not as long as you've got them on a tray, just purely for simplicity's sake. You can have some guys on the tray, some guys off the tray, just for the sake of cover. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
at least that's how we're going to write it in there, just to kind of, the tray is not important, but we suggest it to speed up play.
Yeah,
at
makes
certain
sense.
point levels, basically. Like if you're playing 1,000 points, it's going to be really helpful. So,
yeah, I could definitely
playing like 300 points. You know, I think you could deal with it at 300 or 400 points. But if you're playing 1,000 points, you know, maybe it's time to bring in some movement trays and such, which we haven't gotten that far yet. But that's going to be one of the things we're going to be experimenting with soon. It's going to be interesting. So the most we've done so far is 600, and at 600. I still didn't feel I needed a movement tray, but I could see where it would have been helpful. But it was interesting. It was fun.
Now, when you guys start blowing the board, you know, when you start blowing the points up like that, are you guys talking about like doing bigger boards? You know, like for example, going back to like 40K Apocalypse, it was they would take 2 6x4s and flip them and stick them side by side. So what you had was a 6x8 table. Are you guys thinking about doing the same thing?
Right. Not quite. for sea battles, maybe, but that's gonna be a pretty extreme game that I don't think you'll see very often. I could be wrong. Who knows? But
bullshit, Nick.
If you've got like 10 ships on the table, you're probably gonna need some room to maneuver just to not crash into each other. Whereas a land battle, right? So when we played 600 points, which is fairly huge, it's basically 3 times the size of a typical game. We played that on a 6x4, and it still felt like we probably could have played it on like a 5x4, and it would have been okay. 4x4 may have been a bit small at that point. So I think a 6x4 table, because we've scaled the game to play smaller on a smaller area, a 6x4 table, I would probably wager is probably going to be able to hold up to like 800 points on land. And then probably half that at sea. I mean, you could always do more, but it's going to be quick and bloody, of course, because when ships are right on top of each other, there's not a lot to do at that point. But
right.
It also depends on the ships you're using. So if you've got like 6 galleons, 3 on each side, you could probably do that on a 6x4. Don't use terrain, scroll around. So it takes up the entire width of the table. So
yeah, that would be a little insane. I was thinking about that because like the last time that even Nick and I played, it was a 200-point game on a 6x4,
mm-hmm.
and I felt like we probably could have jammed a couple more troops in there, but after a while, I almost wonder where it's like, does it reach a point where it starts hitting like Napoleonics, where it's like we're just going to march in a line shooting the whole time. So it was one of those things where I was like,
At 200 points, we generally play on a 3x4. You could do a 4x4 just as well, but just increase the deployment. But that's kind of what we set it up for. So we've set it up to play on like a regular size game is set up to be playable on a 4x4 table.
Right.
Right. So that's the way we've kind of designed it. And when you're playing less than that, even smaller, we've had ship battles on 3x3s, right, without a problem, and they were actually pretty good fun games, and everything happening still.
Well, the nice part with the ship battles is that you're not really just, limited to the 3x3. You just reset the game state.
Right. Yeah,
unless you're a dirty cheater and you might have left the other ship behind, as the rule book says.
Yes, and the new video that explains it too, by the way, which are on our website. We now have the complete rule book in video form. So if you don't want to read the book, it's always good to have the reference, of course. But the entire rule book exists now in video form on our website.
That's cool.
.com if you want to check that out. It's obviously very long, but we've broken it down into like a little how YouTube has where you can like kind of skip to little points. So if you want to look up a specific chapter, just want to see how that works, or a specific section, you kind of fast forward or click a little thing, and it'll take you right to that part.
Okay,
the video's divided up that way.
You got the show breaks in there with like the specific segments.
Yep, yeah, and everything is titled correctly and everything. So
fantastic. Yeah, I was wondering how that was going to work, but honestly, I've been so busy lately at work. Like, it's funny. I talk to a lot of people. They're like, "Oh, Tim, what do you do for work?" I'm like, "Well, I work in the industry." What does that entail? I'm like, "Well, during 3 months of the year, it means that I work for the first 4 hours of the day, and I spend the rest of the day watching gaming videos on YouTube." But like during this point of the year, I'm like, I barely have time to even look at my phone. Like if someone texts me or messages me, I'm like, there's just no way. But
yeah, I know what it's like. I've been I was technically on vacation the last 3 days, but I've worked more in the last 3 days than I have in, most days of the year because of Kickstarter, everything going on. So because everybody else is on vacation, so I had to do more work. But I had no babysitting, so all my babysitting was on vacation with me. So yeah, well, he's off too, so he wasn't there to stop me. But all my babysitting was on vacation, so I mean, I might as well at that point. There's no point I'm just gonna either stay home and not show up to work and take care of my kid and get no work done, or just go with where my babysitters, my mother went, and then let her take care of the kid with me there, so I can at least get some work done online. So tried to keep up on Kickstarter comments and Facebook and everything.
Yeah. So overall, like with the Kickstarter, how have the comments been? Have you been getting like some good constructive criticism, if there has been criticism? I haven't really had a chance to keep up with any of it, so I figured I'd ask.
Yeah, there's definitely been some, had some really good ideas. Most of which I think we've been able to implement so far. That's not quite my department. They generally, as I've said probably before, they have to stop me from just giving everything away all the time. So I'm not allowed to make any of those decisions. So, but I know we've been able to put a lot of them into practice. Like people wanted blister packs, so we figured why not? We could do that. It's more work for us in the back end, but it's not out of this world. It's just putting blisters together. Which
after a while, you're gonna have to do it for retail anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. So. And we've gotten, it's just you're a little hesitant sometimes to add some things just because some stuff we added like in the last Kickstarter where we had never done anything before, and we're like, yeah, we could do that, and then push came to shove, we're like, wow, this is a giant pain and taking up all of our time. We should never have done this. But there's things. With the lessons we've learned from the last Kickstarter, I'm very confident that anything we're committing to now, we're going to be able to handle without a problem. This should go. I feel like our last one went pretty smoothly. Aside from dice were pretty rough. Getting the dice, our dice maker. We've moved on. We're having trouble just finding consistent dice makers, which is why you haven't seen a lot of dice stuff this time on the Kickstarter. So I don't know if I'm allowed. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that or not, but whatever.
Oh, it's fine. You didn't give away any names, so it should be fine there. But
I can believe that you've had a hard time with dice makers. Every time I roll those dice, they hate me. I even bought another set of dice for the Spanish, and they still hate me.
So it's more of a problem with delivery. We were pretty much behind a month on the last Kickstarter just because of dice. So this time we have dice we want to add. I don't know if that's been. I'm kind of lost track. I don't even know if that's been put up yet or not. But there are some dice we want to add, but it's just one set of dice probably. Unless something happens, we can find something really reliable between now and then. I don't it happening. So I know people want kind of their Dutch and native dice, which would be cool, right. And we'll probably have them eventually. But we just got to get that. We just don't want it to. We don't want it holding up an entire Kickstarter. We don't want, everybody waiting because the freaking guy can't get us our dice. So, and because you got to get stuff, you got to freight stuff to overseas, so that if you're missing one thing, you can't send anything. It's incredibly frustrating. So, we're careful what we do on that, so that we don't screw anybody over, and people can get their stuff as early as possible.
Yeah, definitely. It is a challenge, but when we're done talking, I mean, if you need some help with dice, I've got a guy. So now keep in mind,
that's good. I will definitely.
But if it's,
they all are apparently. So.
Well, it's not cheap to produce them here in the States. I really wish it was. Like, we're getting better. Yeah. So I know a lot of people they really want to try to keep things, not just in country but in continent a lot of times, and there's card manufacturers and box manufacturers and card stock manufacturers in the United States that are doing, the same quality of work with the same speed and keeping the prices comparable to what you would get, if you were to take it all and do it all in China.
Right.
But right now, anything dealing with plastic is still a problem here in the States.
Yeah, this is true. We've been looking into some sets that we want to do in plastic as well going forward. It's tough. It's tough to make it happen, to make it reality, because we don't want to sink ourselves trying to make a die or a plastic sprue kit or something, so.
Yeah, because I can tell you nightmares about that one, but that's for another time entirely. So.
Oh, we've heard stories. I can only imagine.
Oh man, yeah, it's just, dear God. I think Nick, I'm sure you've heard me talk about him a couple times here and there off the podcast about the nightmares of plastic molding.
Just a couple.
I mean, just for that reason alone, we'll probably always make metal, and we have I think a lot of our customer base likes our metal, so we'd probably never stop doing them, but we probably would scale it back to a degree if we ever went in that direction. But I don't know, we'll see how it goes. That's still very much far future for us. Although we do want to do kind of an affordable starter set that does have some stuff in plastic, so that particularly a full plastic kit with terrain bits and whatnot. I mean, the terrain would be like cardboard stuff, but a mat, a rule book, dice, the whole kind of 2-player starter. In fact, we want to do it themed around Blackbeard's last battle and have that be our introduction into the 18th century. So when we get there, so that'll be our introduction to the next kind of setting for Blood and Plunder. Although it's still compatible with the current one, a lot of the troop types and stuff will transition just fine. But the idea is to have a box with a little sea mat, maybe make it double-sided so it's land and sea. It's all a matter of pricing stuff out, and throw in some D10s, some little tokens for some cardboard punch outs for like measuring and tokens for tracking fatigue and reloads and stuff like that. But I'd like to make it a really nice set that it's almost like a board game. Everything's in there you need. You could just open that box up and play Blood and Plunder.
Right, which that's something that nowadays a lot of people are wanting a lot more of. You got a kid now. It's like you just after a while, like your hobby time just starts dwindling away to the point where it's like, okay, I've got this much time to play a game. Let's play the game.
Yep.
Right. I often find myself playing a game with a baby in my arm. So you have to learn to measure and move with one hand and do everything with one hand.
That's just tournament prep. That's what I call it.
Don't complain about it right now, though, because in a couple more years, he's going to want to play with them, too.
Oh, I know. I've got my while we were on vacation, so my brother works with us, and he helps me with a lot of design and history research. So we were playing games all weekend, and his kid is now 4 years old, and he was just there the whole time, saying he's gonna play, he's gonna roll the dice, he's gonna move this guy there. So yeah. I can already see that happening.
We're playing a game, but we're actually doing research right now.
Yeah, exactly.
I can see how that went. So you guys are trying to move units, and there's always that one guy in each unit that's just going rogue. He's just over here doing his own thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's the sacrifice model. Just sacrifice him to the child, so to distract him for long enough to hopefully get a turn in.
Damn it, Carl!
Nice.
And when the unit takes a casualty war, that's the casualty there. That guy there, that's the one we're pulling out. So.
Yeah. So you mentioned a couple of times like the campaign stuff. Now that's just going to be more of a supplement in the next book, right? That's not going to be like a fully focused separate book. That's just something you're kind of throwing into the next book. Okay.
Right. Yeah. So the next book is going to be kind of light on rules for the most part. So I know a lot of expansion books kind of add a ton of new rules, new options and stuff. And I didn't want to do too much of that. I didn't want to put any new rules at all, though I'm realizing with some of the stuff we're doing, some of the different unit types, we do have to throw in some new rules that are pertinent to the new units. So they don't really it's not like you need to have both books to play. That part's important to me. I don't want it to be that way. That I always find it kind of annoying when games do that. Although sometimes I realize it's necessary. But so there's going to be the rules for larger battles. There's going to be some and a lot of rules that tie in with that. Then there's the characters, which we're adding. So those guys are going to have their own set of rules. That's new, but again, they only exist in that book. You don't need them to play the game. And then you've got the campaigns. So the campaigns and the new army lists are going to take up the big bulk of what's in the book. So everything that was in the original book as far as an army list is going to be, and unit type is going to be present, so that you can kind of use it as kind of a codex for all the armies, sort of thing. Your one book to reference all your stats, all your units, things like that. And then the campaigns that are going to go in there. It looks like right now we're probably going to do 2. We're going to do a little bit more of kind of a simple one, and then we may do a little bit more of an in-depth one. So because we've got 2 guys working on stuff, and they're giving us input and feedback, and I like both of them a lot. We're going back and forth with them on those, and may just keeping both. maybe we'll release one later, but it's going to just be a matter of space at the end of the day. See what we could fit in there. So,
yeah,
I don't know if that answered your question or not. I may have ranted. I apologize.
No, it's totally fine. Yeah, I mean, sometimes like coming up with like campaign rules it's a bitch, to say the least. Like from a just a game perspective, because you're throwing a lot of time and effort at something that it's great for stores, it's great for clubs, but it's one of those things where it's like campaigns are not built at all for pickup games. So like if your local community is not a pickup, or is not campaign driven or tournament driven or like structured organized play driven, 90% of the games that are played in any game are pickup games. So it's almost like the viewpoint is like you're almost throwing work at it for something that's barely ever going to get used, but how much work has to go into it to do it right.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly what I realized. So thankfully though, we've got a lot of really good, we've got a lot of fans who do great work. I mean, and these guys they just kind of emailed us this stuff and we're like, man, this is really awesome. So we're just going to kind of patch that together. We may just kind of get them all and try to combine them into some sort of structure, but they've done the bulk of that work, and I will put them out there right now so that people don't harass.
Yeah, I get it.
So I won't say that they're really cool and really cool. There'll be options there for. It's probably going to end up being 2 campaigns. There's probably going to be one that's actually geared toward pickup games, and another one that's geared towards the more like organized kind of playing sort of games.
Right. Which makes sense.
Right.
So I know that one of the other things you guys have talked quite a bit about, and it's been mentioned a few times, and Alex has hinted at it, so I understand you guys can't say like too much, like how much you've got done so far, but I know that you guys have been looking at options for period terrain, because it seems that it's difficult to find anything that's still in production that is the Caribbean.
Right. Yes. So that is something that we were actively working on right before Kickstarter. We've got some stuff. We've got a guy who's working on some buildings and such to take a pause because of the Kickstarter. But once we're through the Kickstarter, I hope to be able to start focusing on that again. We need to get finished with the development of the book, which will probably happen toward the end of the summer. And I'm hoping that right after that, you'll start to see some releases on terrain. We've got one thing I think I could give away pretty okay, is we've been doing a little bit of stuff with Laser Dreamworks, and Matthew at Laser Dreamworks, who does just incredible stuff. His laser cut ships and stuff are awesome. But he does more than that. He does. Let's just say he's got a really cool fortress that I'm sure people have seen, that we're going to look into making something happen with. Nice. Not just one, actually. He's got multiple different ones. Because we really want to do fortifications. They go right along beautifully with the big battle rules that we're going to throw in there. A bunch of ships can try to bombard and storm a fortress, so that it's not your typical, siege games. In my opinion, are kind of boring in a lot of miniatures games. So that's why I haven't focused a lot on it in the first book, is that I don't think it makes for a super fun game. But when you've got a bunch of ships involved and you're landing troops and you're scaling the walls and you're bombarding, that adds a little bit more of an exciting element to me. So now that we've got the scope to do that, I want to start making some products to go with it. We also want to do, our hope is to do, we've even talked about starting kind of like a sub company, or just getting another building just to start producing terrain, because it's just so hard to find good terrain that you can just kind of pull out of the box and play with. It doesn't necessarily have to be painted incredibly, but something that just works. So we really want to do a full line of terrain. It's very ambitious, of course, but we've got the talent there. We've got the guys who know how to do it and do a great job. Now we just got to get because we're casting our ships, and everything else. It's just stuff that we got to squeeze into our into our run. So we're hoping to grow to be able to do more stuff like that and be able to expand that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the hopes of this Kickstarter is that this can, with a new line of ships and more stuff, we'll have more stuff to sell hopefully, and be able to just expand and give people more cool stuff. That's pretty much that's the end goal here.
Well, yeah, I mean, and to make money to fund any other projects that come up in the future too. But yeah, it's just
exactly, yes.
It's
that would fall into the more cool stuff category. Yes.
Yeah.
So. Yay, cool stuff. More pirates.
So, I mean, especially if you guys are looking at going more, like you said earlier, and where it's you guys are definitely looking at this as more of like or you are anyway, of the colonial historical game. Like,
right.
That's a lot of stuff. Like, especially when you start getting away from the Caribbean as a whole. Like, you start getting into North America, there's similarities, but things start to change really quick, especially when you go from like that 17th century to 18th century.
Right. So first half of the 18th century is not so bad. Where you do start to get some big changes is one, the Native Americans in that region are completely different.
Yeah.
Somebody said the Straits of Florida is like the greatest cultural dividing line that existed in North America, or maybe, yeah, I think it was just North America. But anyway, so that's a big one. Now I say that I'm gonna put the stats in there for these things, but whether or not we make models for that is another question. So there would have to be the demand. There's a lot of companies that make North American Native Americans or Rangers or things like that would kind of fit in well with our line. So I don't really feel the need to make the models, and I can kind of back up having them in the book. Of course, we'd like to make them and sell them. We'd like to make and sell everything, but there's only so much. That's it's more molds, more time spitting, and a lot of times, if something's going to be super niche, it may not even pay for the cost of having it sculpted and molded. So it's one of those things that you just gotta kind of walk the line on. But we're going to have the stats in there, so it's all going to be playable. And there's going to be some units that work, like English militia, for example, will work fine for St. Kitts or Jamaica or New England, without a problem.
Right.
And same thing for the cavalry and the artillery crew. So you will have some stuff that crosses over just fine. And but other stuff, I'm going to put it in there anyway, just for the sake of completion. So make sure that because if you've got, it would from a player's perspective, when I think about it, it's like, man. I remember when I played a little bit of muskets and tomahawks for a little while, and a lot of people were like, man, it'd be really cool if they had stats for like sailors. They have rules for boats and stuff. You could do landings, but they didn't have any of that because it wasn't what they were focused on, right? From my perspective, it's like, if you're able to come up with the time to design it, why not throw it in there for the people who want to have it, And I personally enjoy that setting and that stuff. So, I mean, I'm going to design them for myself anyway. I might as well throw them in the book for people to play with. So,
well, that's the glory of being the lead designer of your own game for your own company. You can say like, screw it, it's going in the book because I want it.
So. Exactly. Even if it doesn't, let's say you have to cut it for the book, it's going to come out and I'll put it out as a PDF because, like I said, I'm going to do it anyway. I might as well share it with people, right? So.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a big thing to like. Keeping the excitement in the community is just like, again, being passionate about your stuff. And it's like, okay, it didn't make it into a book. It goes into PVDF. Like, you get to see all the stuff I wanted to do anyway. Who cares if you don't like it? I like it.
Right.
My mom said it's awesome. It's all that matters.
Yeah. Mom likes what I do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that's cool. I really like that too. Like, I was actually talking with Nick a little bit yesterday. We were kind of bullshitting on the 4th, and and of course 4th being the day where everybody's always bombastic about stuff. We were I was kind of bringing it up to him. It's like, it would be fun to run, like, no matter what, both of you have to play like Francois Lolonais. Like, it doesn't matter, English, French, Spanish, it doesn't matter. Like, he is your leader for he is your commander. And you get 4 fortune points, and they can only be used to have him jump between unit to unit. And then whenever, like, the unit that has Francois Lolonais goes into battle with another unit close combat, it almost turns into like a game of Gore Chosen, where it's like, how bad is he going to rip them apart? And what is he going to do to them? So you start rolling the ridiculous charts of like, oh, he ripped this guy's face off, and he's wearing it like a mask. There's no historical reference that he ever did that. It doesn't matter.
That sounds like fun. That would be a cruel world where every commander was Francois Lolonais.
Right. So at that point, you got like two Francois Lolonais trying to prove like who's more psychopath than the other one. Makes for interesting strike test rules.
Yeah, there you go. I can see that. We'll get right on that. That's the next expansion, the Francois Lolonais expansion. The bloody psychopathic murderer expansion.
In the end, it doesn't matter. You'll get eaten anyways.
It's a mini campaign book. Instead of Blood Plunders, it's Sabers and Straitjackets.
Sabers and Straitjackets. I like that. It's a good title.
Oh man. So then at the end, like, you know, no matter what, if you're Francois Lolonais, the one that won, it doesn't matter. You get eaten anyway, so it's not like it matters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, a unit of Darien Indians come onto the table and eat you. Which they only did ceremonially, I will point out. So they just did it to prove a point.
Yeah,
they were not technically cannibals. So.
Yeah, because I remember reading about that too. Like they just picked his ass up and threw him in a fire pit and started ripping him apart. Like according to like I'm sure a lot of this too was alliteration and whatnot, but like from the way they said it, it's like they just monkey stomped him, threw his ass in a fire, and just started ripping him apart with their bare hands and eating him. And I was like, well, that's
something like that, yeah.
Him. Yeah.
I think they just said like they roasted him and then roasted and ate him or something like that. Ate him well roasted or something like that.
Yeah.
I forgot how they put it.
Yeah, because I remember seeing like a little color descriptor where it's like, whoever said it was like, they were like, yeah, it was not good. It wasn't even like.
No, I imagine it wasn't for him.
Yeah, no, of course not. He lost.
I don't know. He was crazy enough, and he liked pain, so.
On others.
He might have liked it on himself too. You never know.
You never know. You do never know.
Yeah.
They come in all sorts.
Yeah, that's very true. Ugh, gross. Awesome. So we have been going on for quite a while, babbling, talking pirates, talking Blood and Plunder. What the hell else is there to talk about?
That's a good point. Yes.
So,
I mean, what else?
I would say not much else.
Yes, but speaking of Blood and Plunder, we did actually have a giveaway this last month, and Nick, I know you've got the details over there on that, so why don't we go ahead and, since Mike's on, let's announce that winner.
All right. So this month's giveaway was sponsored by Firelock Games. We cornered Mike the last time he was on, and we're like, hey, send us stuff. And he was kind enough to do so. He sent us 2 longboats, and then a Spanish and English starter set, and the Blood and Plunder rulebook. I also threw in a couple swivel guns so that your longboats can have some firepower. And if I thought about it sooner, I would have had some blunder monkeys to go with it because, I mean, you just can't have any fun in the game without blunder monkeys.
The winner was spared.
We'll just get their address and send them to them later.
Oops.
But all right, I have the competition right here, so let's go to the winner tab, and we can draw prizes now. Should I draw this and hand it over to Mike so Mike can announce it?
Yes, let's have Mike announce it.
All right, so
cool. Where do I see it?
I'll send it to you in chat in just a second.
Folks, right. Again, you can tell we're very professional at this.
Totally. Someone give me a drum roll while this generates.
How long does it take to generate?
It's drawing now.
You know what? You people get it. There's enough drum roll.
Oh, that's enough here. Yep, this is the chat I'm talking about, Mike.
All right, good.
Where's the stupid paste button? It went away. There it is. All right.
All right. So, do I just say it? Do I just blurt it out?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm probably gonna butcher this pronunciation. So Blake Butchick. Right? Did I get that right?
I'm not sure. I would actually toss this over to Tim. He's the one with the Polish last name.
Okay, yeah, sure. Throw it at the Polak. What do we got?
It's in the chat. It's Blake. I would say it's Bushek. But
Bushek,
I kind of
maybe.
I kind of like how you said it. You know, it's butt check.
Yeah, it very well could be Blake Butchick. So Blake Butchick,
which is kind of awesome.
Right? Awesome.
I'm sorry if I butchered your name, Blake.
You have won the this month's giveaway from Firelock Games. So now you have an even better reason to go and back the Kickstarter for more stuff. Because even though, as Mike said, starter box is really all you need to play, it's really not all you need to play.
Yeah, as it goes with most games, yes.
Nice.
We could give you a box of 100 minis and you find a reason to buy more. It's just the way it goes.
Yeah.
All Lanceros.
All Lanceros all the time.
You're gonna shoot them down. It's gonna hurt, but awesome. So, guys, we've announced the winner. We have talked about pirates. We've talked about AT-43, probably an unhealthy amount, but that's okay. It happens. And
it does.
Yeah. So, folks, this is where we're gonna wrap up this episode of Skirmish Supremacy, and we will see you next time. Thanks for listening to another episode of Skirmish Supremacy. To see more of the antics that Nick and I do, you can check us out on Facebook at Skirmish Supremacy. We also have Twitter, which we can be reached at Skirmish Supreme, because apparently Skirmish Supremacy does not fit in Twitter. And if you want to email us directly, you can reach us at tim@skirmishsupremacy.com or nick@skirmishsupremacy.com. Thanks for listening.